This story starts late at night on October 11th in 1997. The Fairbanks Police Department received a call that a teenage boy had been found unconscious lying on a street corner downtown, beaten beyond recognition. His name was John Hartman, and he died in the hospital later the next day. He was 15. The brutal crime sent shockwaves through the community, and the police rushed to find answers. Within 48 hours, the case was said to be solved with the announcement of the arrest of 4 Native teenagers: Marvin Roberts, Kevin Pease, George Fries, and Eugene Vent. That night, a wedding reception was being held at the Old Eagles Hall downtown. One of the few details known for certain is that all 4 boys stopped in at the party at some point during the night.
What I can tell you is that Marvin Roberts is one of the few people in that crowd that has a car. And Marvin Roberts spends that night essentially giving people rides to and from a wedding reception downtown. Eugene and Kevin Pease start the night at a party outside of town and split up after coming back into town. And Eugene is kind of around the reception when a motel was having trouble with kids partying in one of the rooms. And the guy called the police repeatedly about this. And he said that one of them he'd just been assaulted. Fleeing that, Eugene Vent is stopped by police about 5 blocks away. And that seems like kind of a lucky break, because about 5 blocks away, police are investigating the crime scene at that point of this presumed fatal assault on Hartman. And that kind of takes the investigation off one whole direction. Kevin Pease, he is known to have been involved in trashing his mom's house. And she reports him to police that he's here trashing my house. And when the police first pick Kevin up the next day, I think, he lies to them about having an alibi. And, that's all they need. George is partying with a different group of friends. And from about 10 o'clock on in that night, he is losing a drinking game. And when they stumble kind of downtown to the wedding reception, he is just wasted, and he hurts his foot, likely in a scuffle maybe by that motel. It's uncertain. But in any event, he shows up at the hospital the next afternoon complaining about hurting his ankle in a fight that he's too drunk to recall. And he's sort of opened himself up to leaving police to fit the details together. And so they're all in custody by Sunday night. You do get confessions to the murder from George and Eugene, and that's what sets the police investigation rolling. And so what you saw was about 6 months later, nothing is panning out in the physical evidence, and they never let doubt cause them to sort of back up and look at alternatives.
I knew them from just kind of growing up in this same small community, and nothing about it made sense. We heard, that George had been arrested for beating up some young white kid, that kid had died, and that he'd been arrested, with Marvin Roberts and Eugene Vent and Kevin Pease. And it just, on every conceivable level, it doesn't make sense. A story that involved the 4 of them in a car didn't make sense, social sense, So just immediately it was like, no, George didn't do that. That's just, period. And then what came after that was the information that they'd confessed. If you go through the transcripts, I think 11 or 12 hours into interrogation, Eugene finally goes, okay, maybe, And then immediately, within moments, saying, you know what, I don't even remember any of that. I didn't, you're trying to put stuff in my head. George, who was so drunk that he was blacked out the night before, they essentially kind of latched onto that and said, well, if you don't just go ahead and admit that you probably kicked him a couple times, we're gonna have no choice but to put you away. After enough hours, George kind of gets to this point of like, so okay, I guess maybe I kicked them. But I think that individually, people who knew each of them well were kind of thinking the same thing, just, there's no way.
And did you know Arlo Olson?
Only very peripherally, yeah.
A few days after John Hartman's fatal beating, a Native teenager named Arlo Olson told police that he'd seen Kevin, George, Eugene, and Marvin rob someone while he was standing on the steps of the Old Eagles Hall.
I saw him kick 1 or 2 times before I went back in. I didn't see him take off or nothing. Did you hear anything that they said as they were attacking Mr. Franklin Davis?
Oh, yes. When he was down on the ground, they said, "Give us what you got, bitch." It was pretty dark, but then they had lights out in the parking lot, so you could have a good look there.
Arlo witnesses a robbery that has in itself nothing to do with Hartman's murder. But Arlo's observations of that robbery are what is used to sort of build the whole state's case that like it was a spree of random violence that began with this one robbery and continued a half mile later with the assault on Hartman. Not long after the verdicts were on place, he's wavering. And at the time of the Hartman case, he had some pending charges related to assaults on women when he was drinking. And, you know, I always looked to see if that really gave the detectives leverage. And he told me over a period of interviews that he wasn't really sure what he saw.
I was threatened with, you know, perjury, and then I was threatened with going to jail and them sending the troopers out to get me.
Right.
I wasn't certain of what I saw. I was just trying to get leeway.
Yeah.
I don't care how long they keep me in jail. If they put me on that stand, I'll testify that defendant's behalf.
Over the years, I think the state's reliance on Arlo Olson, who was Native, had racist implications in that even in the jurors sort of were inclined to credit this guy's account more because he was testifying against one of his own.